Are we live, Bill? Are we live?
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Sunday edition of the Shadowcast.
Hey.
The Sunday Hangout. Welcome, guys. We got Magnus Music Machine along with us. And, of course, we all know Tom Willebender. I'm Joel. And we are Midwest Shadows. What's going on, guys?
Hello. So nice to be here.
It's a pleasure.
Hope everyone is having a wonderful weekend.
Definitely. Just been working in the studio. What have you guys been up to?
Well, I have a rare day off, and so I'm taking advantage of it by being here.
Well, awesome. So tonight's show, we're going to be talking about some topic that I think a lot of people are going to be skeptical of, and for good reason. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of skepticism, but there are some definitely weird things out there that people are finding. Tom, what are we talking about?
It happened in deep outer space a few years back. It's called the Phobos Incident.
Tom, what's a Phobos incident?
Well, you got your hobos, you got your bobos.
You got your homos.
You probably never heard of Phobos.
Phobos is a moon, isn't it?
Phobos is a moon of the planet Mars. But this is not your typical moon. This moon is insane. Doesn't make any sense.
So we're going to be talking about this insane moon that doesn't make any sense tonight. We're paying attention to the live chat. We want to, again, welcome everyone to the show. The ghost line is open officially, 773-669-6452 if you want to join us tonight. We appreciate your input. Tom, you know, a moon is a moon, isn't it? A moon is just a big rock that's orbiting a planet or something like that. What's so weird about is this moon haunted? Why are we talking about this moon, Tom?
The moons of Mars are unique in that they shouldn't be there. You see, these are very tiny moons that are in an orbit that doesn't make any sense because they can't be orbiting at that distance if they are captured objects because they're too small.
More than that, it's what's actually been purported to be on these moons. And it's more than just someone coming up with a story, but there's actual evidence, as we're going to be discussing here tonight.
Spacely evidence.
Spacely evidence.
When they sent a space probe to investigate planet Mars, they were very surprised at some of the discoveries they found, and some very unexpected events took place out there in space as well.
Okay. Looking into this and researching this myself, Magnus, are you familiar with what we're talking about tonight's subject, the monoliths and the things that have been found on Phobos? Have you ever heard of this, Magnus?
No, what I am familiar with, though, was back in the 70s, I think it was the Viking spacecraft took a picture of what looked like a face on Mars, but I don't know if it's related to that at all.
Supposedly, depending on who you talk to with that one, and there have been higher resolution photos that have come out. So allegedly, there's there's a couple of different school of thoughts on that. Some people are going to come out and say, "Oh, well, that's definitely been debunked. It's just some weird shadows or something."
Yeah.
However, what we're about to watch is something that is not just a group of. Well, I mean, there's definitely some weird shadows, but it goes along with giving definition to what's there. What we're about to see matches some structures that we will see in other areas of the solar system. It's certainly not limited only to Phobos, including some structures, very, very old and ancient and unexplained structures here also found on Earth that have uncanny similarities that we're unsure what they are actually used for. We just don't know. That's a reoccurring theme here on the Shadowcast. Live chat, what's going on tonight? Maya T, Avery Orchid, and Patrick Owens are there so far. Again, the ghost line is open to guys if you want to join us, 773. And I'm going to leave this phone number in the live chat right now, 773-669-6452. And like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. We appreciate it as we're trying to grow the channel out here a little bit. But we wanted to have a little bit of a conversation tonight and bring our audience along with us, show you something that's really weird going on. It's not just that things are being found on Mars, but it's also that we're, well, you'll see here, but certain landers have encountered difficulties and just weird anomalous phenomenon as they come within range and vicinity of these things. So it kind of makes you scratch your head. So we're going to play this. Tom, is there anything you want to add before we jump into this with the with playing this clip here for our audience?
I want you to pay very close attention because there are unusual events happening in space that you deserve to know about, and you probably have never heard anything about.
This is a clip from Phobos. Let's see here. You guys hear that all right? How's our audio?
No, I don't hear it.
Negative.
You're not hearing that?
Nope.
Yeah.
Assassinations.
Okay.
Got it.
You
Yeah.
got that? All right.
You may hearken back to a time without the
So he's
internet.
talking about,
when
conspiracy
theories
stuff,
were more
conspiracy
difficult
stuff.
to disprove and debunk.
Again,
A
this is
time
from
when
a...
strange lights in the sky were not easily explained away by experimental aircraft or a teen piloting a drone. The story I am about to tell you is from such a time, at the end of a decade that had been consumed by suspicion and nuclear threats. This is the story of the Phobos incident. The 1980s were a time of rapid and booming growth all over the world. When Mikhail Gorbachev assumed control of Russia in 1985, he tore down the Berlin Wall, and with it the Iron Curtain, signaling the end of the decades-long Cold War that had
A
vexed
man was riding it like a cowboy.
one country against the other as enemies and rivals. The Cold War had ultimately assured that both were too occupied to achieve their full potential as nations. Now that the war was over, however, the US and Russia entered a renaissance of sorts, especially within their respective space programs.
Looks like a JW.
1985, the Russian Space Agency started work on a new pair of unmanned space probes using a new design, one that would replace their older models, which had seen use in the Venera planetary missions since 1975. These new probes were called Phobos 1, Phobos 2, as they were
Obo!
Mars orbit and interact with Mars moon, Phobos, and they were highly technologically advanced for their
I love
time.
how Phobos'
Among many
moon is
sensors
obviously...
and instruments
it's not very
aboard Phobos
round.
1
It's
and
kind of
2 were
oblong,
X-ray and
weird-looking
gamma-ray
thing.
spectrometers,
An unusual shape.
temperature
And
spectrometers, seismometers, radiation detectors, a DAS
as
lamp, and the VS
Phobos spacecraft.
that would eventually
So the Phobos
broadcast
spacecraft
one of
had
the
a
most
full-on
perplexing
sensor
and
complement.
incredible images ever to be observed.
Oh, yeah.
Just to go out there and...
And there's two of them.
That was to launch two landers. A
Two
stationary
landers were supposed to
platform
happen.
and a mobile hopper from the main probe onto the surface of Phobos permanently, after the orbital objectives of the main probes were complete. The two landers would stay on the surface of Phobos and observe both the Moon and Mars until they were lost to space debris or mechanical failure. Considering the sensors and experimental equipment aboard the landers, this could have been a monumental opportunity to study the Red Planet and its subsequent satellites, providing Earth with atmospheric, seismographic, spectroscopic, and image data for years to come. However, Phobos 1 and 2 never completed their long-term objectives. Phobos 1
Something
was lost
happened.
early in the mission due to a radio telecommunications error. However, Phobos 2 was lost under more mysterious circumstances. Suffice to say, the Phobos program was one of international interest. Phobos 1 and 2 were the culmination of the effort of Russia and 14 other nations, the United States, France, and West Germany among them. This type of cooperation was a sign to the masses. People were no longer looking up into the sky in fear of rockets carrying nuclear oblivion. Instead, curiosity and awe once again turned their eyes to the stars. Though the days of walking on the moon had seemingly passed, the last half of the 1980s saw many a cosmic spectacle. Phobos was no exception. In July of 1988, Phobos 1 and 2 were launched. The journey to Mars was going to take 6 months. Phobos 1 was lost after the first month of the journey, but Phobos 2 continued on into the stars. Error disables Soviet probe, but second craft on course for Mars, 1988. Both probes, now millions of miles from Earth, are scheduled to arrive at Mars in January. They were to study Mars first and then move on to Phobos, the small Martian moon. A wrong command punched into a computer by a ground controller caused Phobos 1 to lose its lock on the sun. As a result, its solar panels turned toward the cold darkness of space and could no longer convert the sun's radiation into electricity. The probe subsequently lost power and died. The second probe is set to send a lander to the moon's surface on May 25th. As Phobos 2 continued on its now more lonely journey toward the orbit of the red planet, the public on Earth dreamt out loud about the eventual manned spaceflight to Mars. Soviet-led mission, A Step Toward Manned Mars Flight, reads the title of a Chicago Tribune article from 1988. The article told of a Moscow summit meeting shortly before the launch of Phobos 1 and 2, and of talks between Reagan and
We're
Gorbachev
autographing dictionaries.
manned space mission to Mars. Clearly the times had changed, and world cooperation was expanding humanity's goals in space. Then, in January 1989, Phobos 2 entered Mars orbit. The planet of Mars has acquired one more satellite. A Moscow news report from January 29, 1989 reads, "It continues to say that the mission will bring mankind closer to unraveling the mysteries of the planet."
That's what you think.
What time? It did. Phobos 2 gathered data on the Sun, space, Mars, and Phobos, and returned a total of 37 images of Phobos and Mars that are still incredible to look at today.
There it is.
On March 1st, a photo was released, transmitted by Phobos 2, that caused unrest. When these optical and infrared images of Hydraides chaos were received, the team was unsure as to what they were seeing. Curious shapes littered the surface, observed by the optical imaging cameras aboard Phobos 2. More curious, however, which seemed strange. Many agreed that
My.
or resemblance to those found in cities on Earth.
Well.
They appeared to be generated beneath the surface of Mars.
Oh my.
The pattern is 60 kilometers wide and could be easily mistaken for an aerial view of Los Angeles. Like the London Science Museum said of the
Yes.
The images were certainly unsettling, something that was only compounded upon by the fact that Phobos 2 didn't
That
transfer
shouldn't be there.
24 days later. By this time, Phobos 2 had synced into roughly the same orbit as Phobos and Deimos, continued to return images of the surface of Mars. People waited for the probe to send more images and hopefully gain some clarity in light of recent developments. The next images to be released, however, did not clarify the situation and were even more mysterious.
Uh-oh.
These images are referred to as shadows. These images are shadows on the surface of Mars. They are observable in both optical and infrared, and you can observe features of Mars through them. The shadow has an iconic shape, which stretches close to 300 kilometers across the Martian surface.
How about that?
That's a pretty big shadow. 300
They would be
kilometers?
the last images to be released
Yep, that's a big boy.
about 30 years. Because on March 28, 1989, Phobos 2 failed. There were whispers that it had detected something strange just before going completely silent. March 31st, 1989, Headlines from Moscow state that Phobos 2 captured strange photos of Mars before losing contact with its base. Speculation ran wild as whispers from the scientists
What's that?
over 20 kilometers long.
That shouldn't be there.
Missed these claims as hearsay, no matter how many scientists came out to describe the images, which were not yet made public. However, in December of 1991, Marina Popovich, an Air Force colonel involved in the RSA, held a press conference at the Russian consulate in San Francisco. There, she would reveal to the world the final image taken by Phobos 2 before its failure 3 years earlier. What Marina would reveal would shake the public. To many, it is still the most damning evidence supporting intelligent life outside of Earth. The world looked on with slack jaws when she held up this still depicting Phobos and something in the foreground, something that shouldn't have been there. It was a very long, flat shape, 20 kilometers long, and it appeared to
My.
The image taken by Phobos 2 was confirmed by several optical cameras and the infrared camera. It was not an error. It was not an image artifact. Described to be an unidentified.
So this thing is, hey, let's pause this real quick. So this thing, okay, they're explaining this wasn't some sort of a weird optical illusion or something like this. This is flying through space. It's 20 kilometers long. It is moving.
Looks just like the game Asteroids.
Little bit. That's a little weird.
You know what it looks like, Joel?
It may have somehow shut down or destroyed the remaining.
What was just seen recently flying through our solar system and
Yes, you were thinking the same thing I was.
Talking about this
cigar-shaped UFO that came flying through our solar system last year at unbelievable speeds.
And it was course correcting too, wasn't it? That's what's interesting.
In the coming months after the image of the mysterious craft was revealed, many scientists collaborated over the shadow images, now given shocking context as the final images from Phobos 2 revealed a possible source of the shadows. Through that collaborative effort, it was learned that the shadows had been moving as the images were taken. This unidentified flying stalker faced the anomaly directly in the moments before the probe went dark. Lest they could explain it without the idea of extraterrestrial intelligence. The number of photos, the fact that they were taken by 2 optical and 1 infrared cameras, and the fact that the shadows in the earlier images seemed to correspond to the vessel in the final image, all seemed to point to one chilling conclusion. In the late winter and early spring months of 1989, Phobos 2 was not alone in Mars orbit, and it would appear that we are not alone, either in the universe or even in the solar system.
Not an artifact. What's casting a shadow on Phobos over 300 kilometers long as well? I'm kind of curious about that. Well, what? That's a giant monolith to be casting that kind of a shadow. So there's a couple of weird things happening out there on the moon of Mars. That's a giant monolith. It's an absolute huge thing happening out there that who even knows about it. Did you want to play this video as well, Tom? The one that's talking about with the photos of the model.
Fired up.
Yeah.
Do it.
This is another one. This is one of our favorite channels here, Secure Team. Check them out.
Your team.
Absolutely. Now this is something along those lines. You guys, let's just see this here. Now they're finding these things reoccurring in multiple places.
Ceres is a planet between Mars and Jupiter. It is the largest object in the asteroid belt.
In the Ceres Lights, the dwarf planet known for the mysterious lights found in one of its most largest craters, and that we've done many videos on in the past, and I will put
it's
a link
giving
in
off light
to some of these past video
Luminescent
anomalies we found on there.
features in the craters of the planet Ceres.
On Twitter.
Unexplained.
More high resolution image of these lights on Ceres, these glowing lights, and the poster of the tweet said, "Hey, look at this square object just to the right of the massive, largest glowing object in the crater." that looks like the monolith that was found on Mars and also Phobos. Phobos being a moon of Mars. So I took a look at the image and I zoomed in on it, and sure enough, there is a square-looking object with 4 corners on the ground, and it definitely looks similar to the monoliths, which are these large, square, towering structures that were found on Mars and Phobos. Now, if you haven't seen those images, here is the...
Everyone relax. It's just a weather balloon. All right. What you're looking at there is just a weather balloon. It's or an asteroid impact, but regardless, it's
everyone. That object you're looking at is the size of a building. It's the size of a business building, and it's sitting on a featureless plane.
And we're saying monolith in quotations because that's what it looks like. If you've ever seen the film 2001: A Space Odyssey, that is the type of object we're talking about. These large, square, black or white colored pieces of stone or whatever material sticking up out of the ground almost like a monument. So here's the so-called Mars monolith that has got a lot of attention in the past years. And as you can see, it definitely has some similarity to this square object found on Ceres. Now, some have said that these monoliths are markers placed there, showing that whatever planet or moon that has one has been visited or has been occupied, sort of like planting their flag, like we did on the moon. And another monolith that looks very similar is to the one found on Phobos, which is a moon, a very interesting and mysterious moon of Mars. And we definitely want you to know about Phobos, so we're going to talk a little bit about that here. You don't already know, but many people believe that Phobos, which is this very oddly shaped and a mysteriously orbiting moon of Mars, that many have said in the past is artificial and hollow. People have also said that it has characteristics on the outside of it that are indicative of someone mining the structure. And as you're seeing images here of Phobos, we have these long...
Look at that.
That basically wrap around it.
That's a trail.
Interesting.
That's not random.
We see all the other bodies in the solar system as if these marks have been chiseled.
Look at that. That's all in a line, isn't it?
Mining vehicles. In fact, the European Space Agency, or ESA, which is the European equivalent of NASA, has basically confirmed what has long been rumored, which is that Mars moon Phobos is hollow, and it's possibly artificial, likely. The ESA study, which has appeared in Geophysical Research Letters, states that Phobos is not a captured asteroid, which is sort of an old explanation for Phobos. And the many anomalies were accepted by science for many years. Here is an old illustration about what the interior of Phobos might look like, hollowed out. And so the ESA reported independent results from 2 subgroups of the Mars Express radio science team who independently analyzed Mars Express radio tracking data for the purpose of determining consistently the gravitational attraction of the moon Phobos on the MEX spacecraft, and hence the mass of Phobos. And they concluded that the interior of Phobos likely contained large voids. When applied to various hypotheses bearing on the origin of Phobos, these results were inconsistent with the proposition that Phobos is a captured asteroid. The official ESA Phobos website offers explicit scientific data from multiple perspectives, which strongly support the idea that this is what radar echoes would look like coming back from inside an enormous, hollow, possibly geometric spaceship. Phobos has an internal 3D geometric radar signature. The concurrence of all 3 of these independent Mars Express experiments, imaging, internal mass distribution.
So the point they're making here is this isn't somebody just, coming up with, oh, yeah, that thing's obviously hollow because it looks like it's hollow. No, there's actual scientific evidence to back up that fact that there's giant voids inside.
It's hollow.
It shouldn't be there.
Tracking and internal radar imaging now agree that the interior of Phobos is partially hollow with internal geometric, quote, voids inside it. So it's very likely that Phobos is not a natural moon and not a captured asteroid, and that it is hollow. And that
it's not the same type of rock that's on Mars.
Dr. Shlovsky found back in the 1960s. The astrophysicist first calculated the orbital motion of Phobos. He came to the inescapable conclusion that the moon is artificial and hollow, and he realized as the years progressed into decades that Phobos' orbital velocity and position no longer matched the mathematically predicted position. He studied in depth the tidal, gravity, and magnetic forces and came to the conclusion that no natural causes could account for the origins of the two odd moons or their bizarre.
In other words, it's not on a natural ballistic orbit. The orbit.
Exactly. It's
Okay.
too small. It's too small to be at the distance it's orbiting.
And the orbit has changed. It's varied from the way that it used to be, according to, because look, I mean, the things, like masses that are this large, their orbit doesn't just change. It's very predictable. And they're saying that in at least the last few decades, it has changed, and it's done it in a very unnatural way.
Our behavior,
orbit
particularly
is
that exhibited by Phobos. He also felt the second smaller Mars moon, Deimos, also to be artificial, and that likely someone or something had built them. So again, Phobos, Mars, and now Ceres seem to have these same almost identical square structures on their surface. Of course, we will continue researching this and see what more we can find. And by the way, speaking about Phobos, and we mentioned this before, there was also the Phobos incident, when the Russians sent 2 probes to monitor Phobos and were knocked out of orbit by a long, cigar, cylindrical-shaped craft, a picture of, before the second ship was also lost. Furthermore, Soviet Air Force Colonel Marina Popovich has gone on record stating that Phobos is an artificial structure. She gave this information to SETI's international director, Dr. Stephen Greer. Her sources also advised that it is hollow. The credentials of Marina Popovich are second to none. A PhD from the University of Leningrad, a graduate from the Military Flight School, and at the peak of her career, she set over 100 aviation records, of which 90 still stand unbroken. Her contacts on the subject stem from her former husband being the first man to rendezvous with another spacecraft in orbit during the Vostok 4 flight in August 1962. And Popovich was associated with the controversial frames that you're seeing here that were smuggled out of top secret files. And as you can see, there's a cigar-shaped craft in a frame taken by Phobos 2, which is also the same object that is apparently casting the oblong shadow on the surface of Mars in an earlier photo seen here. In October 1989, Soviet scientists published a series of technical reports on the experiments that the Phobos 2 spacecraft did manage to conduct. The report confirms that the spacecraft was spinning after it was knocked out, either because of computer malfunction or because it was impacted by an unknown object shortly before contact was lost. So again, just to recap, monoliths on Phobos. The Phobos 1 and Phobos 2 spacecrafts
look at that shadow
of Mars and Phobos and were both knocked out and all contact was lost, but not before photographing a large cylindrical ship, which was then caught casting a long oblong shadow on Mars' surface. Then we have another monolith structure found on Mars, which again is very similar and brings us back to this image showing almost an identical object on Ceres in these new images. So again, there are definitely some mysterious things going on here. We'll continue to monitor them. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And as always, stick around and we'll see you back soon with much, much more.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out Secure Team's YouTube channel, it's definitely worth it. But guys, what do you guys think? What is that? I mean, is that natural? I don't think so. I don't think that's natural. Is that an alien? Are we seeing alien structures on the moon? And on the moon's on Mars and its moon? What are we looking at? If you guys want to open up the ghost line, if you guys want to join us on the phone, our phone number is 773-669-6452. We'd love to hear from you guys. See what you guys think about what we just saw. Tom and Magnus, weigh in on this. So they send the probe out there, a series of probes. One of them, someone hits a button and it kind of zigs when it should have zagged, and it lost the lock on the sun and goes off and just decides to do its own thing. The second Phobos lander actually gets into orbit, takes pictures on a couple of different spectrums, including infrared. They're finding subsurface structure, city-like structures that are showing up on infrared film. Radar is bouncing and showing geometrical caverns. The orbit is changing in just a series of decades. It's not on a normal ballistic arc of an orbit. It's changing. And as you see on that little planetoid there, we also see a monolith that's just off to the right of a spot that for some reason is glowing. Kind of like a city, if you ask me. What do you guys think? Are we apparently alone in the universe? I don't think I can say no. I really don't. I don't know. What do you guys?
I'll weigh in a little bit here. No, I don't believe we're alone in the universe. Now, as to what that is, there's some theories, and I'm not saying they're true, but one of them, actually, it ties back to what I was originally talking about when the Viking, I think it was Viking 2. I can't remember, but anyways, it took those photos of the so-called face on Mars, and it had also in that, I guess you call it a compound, there's a pyramid structure, a couple structures that look like buildings, and then it was debunked and all that, but the whole debunking process was a little bit suspect as well. And one theory is, which I find probably the most plausible to explain a lot of stuff like this, is that there once was a civilization on Mars, and for some reason it was decimated, and perhaps whatever is going on with Phobos here is related to that somehow, that maybe some, I don't know if they were humans or what, survived, and they could still be messing around out in space there, man. I don't know.
You know what gets me is the fact that if you guys have been paying attention to recent archaeological finds, I'm sure Tom probably knows what I'm talking about, but there's evidence, real solid, good evidence, that there have been previous advanced civilizations here on Earth that aren't just tens of thousands of years old, but hundreds of thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Way before, basically what we're looking at is humanity as a species with amnesia. We really can't begin to explain what's out there. And, with the proximity being what it is within our own solar system and the age of Mars and Earth being so similar, who's to say that those aren't the remains of a breakaway human civilization that decided to say, sayonara, I'm getting off this rock and I'm going over here for a while?
Exactly. That's kind of what I was was getting at there, is that perhaps that is us still out there, and that was us who destroyed our place, or where we lived.
Magnus, are you suggesting that perhaps the Phobos object, I'm going to set aside the moon itself for a moment, but the cigar-shaped object, are you suggesting that it's a human technology from hundreds of thousands of years ago?
Yeah, I am. I don't know, but that seems plausible. I mean, to me, the concept of a completely different species that's more advanced, I think it would kind of have its shit together a bit more and not leak things. But who knows? Maybe it makes mistakes like we do. But
Magnus, are you thinking that perhaps Phobos and Deimos were terraformed by Terran Martians, Earth colonist Martians, and that they made a causeway of sorts, turned it into a moon?
Well, it's a possibility. I don't know. The fact that a highly accredited scientist would suggest that it's artificial, well, actually come out and confirm that it's artificial, and if there is evidence that it's hollow, then yeah, it's very possible.
Well,
let me
suggest this real quick though, Tom. Yeah, so that it has symmetrical caverns within this thing. Okay, so they've confirmed that. A couple different ways have done that. I have to ask you. So say you wanted to create a colony in space, and space isn't exactly the friendliest place. It's highly, there's a lot of different energy flying through there, and radiation is a huge problem for interstellar travel. what better? I mean, what easier way to do things really than to take a big rock? Let's hollow this thing out and just turn it into, you know, a flying, you know, what I'm saying? Because you'd have your shielding, you'd have your structure there already. It's not like you have to invest in materials. You basically take a giant, you know, like an asteroid or a planetoid, you hollow it out, you build on the inside of it, and then you're, you know, shielded from all the radiation. You don't have to worry about that. You know, if you were looking at building you know, a long-term space colony, that seems like it would make sense to do it like that. Tom, what do you think?
To your point, it's also been said that the best way to avert radiation during space travel is to have a cigar-shaped vessel.
How's that?
If it's perpendicular to the solar wind, it's only going to catch a small amount of the radiation. Most of the radiation is going to pass instead of something that has a longer width. Do you see what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
And if you have a reinforced, if the front or the back of the ship is reinforced with something like lead, it's just an aerodynamic. Well, not aerodynamics because there's no air, but you know what I'm saying. That it would be the most effective for reducing the effects of the rigors of space travel.
It's just silly because, you know, a couple of months ago, you know, you have everyone going crazy because you have that gigantic cigar-shaped craft, you know, passing through the solar system, and they said it was doing it in a very unnatural way. A lot of people were saying, "Hey, this is artificial. Look at this." Magnus, did you talking about?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit, Joel.
Did you see what we were talking about with the?
Yeah,
I'm out.
The cigar shape, yeah, and that's actually many years ago. I saw a cigar shaped thing in the sky. I told you guys about it before, and it's a recurring theme. So I think there's a lot of weight to that.
There's a lot of cigar shaped UFOs.
Yeah,
a lot.
Now, does that also provide some sort of cloaking for, say you're in the vacuum of space, and would that explain why maybe it wasn't captured on? I mean, it captured the shadow apparently, but not the actual craft itself. Is there something about that shape?
Well, are you guys thinking that this shadow was caused because the shadow is 300 kilometers? The object is 20 kilometers. Are you guys thinking that is the shadow caused by that object, or could it be something different? Because that was an elongated object too, but it also kind of looked like a flying saucer. You know what I mean? Where the other thing kind of looked like a pencil.
It depends on your perspective,
I guess.
Got it.
I got kind of the gist that it was something that was trying to maybe defer the detection of what the Phobos satellite was trying to take a picture of. It was trying to run interference. So that's kind of what I surmised.
It's unknown what happened to Phobos 2, but in its final moments, it was spinning out of control, suggesting they said, well, maybe it malfunctioned somehow, or maybe something hit it.
Oh,
and that's quite a coincidence that the last photo it took was of an unidentified flying object, not coming towards it. It was something that it photographed from a distance, and then all of a sudden, bonk, goes flying out of control, and it spiraled to its death. Do you think that it was attacked?
Yeah, that's basically what it sounded like to me.
My IT is asking in the live chat if the moons have gravity, and yeah, I mean anything.
All objects have gravity.
Yeah, anything that's following the rules of physics, if it's got mass to it, it's going to have gravity.
But if that is hollow on the inside, it's going to have much less mass than it might appear. So
it's generating less gravity. I mean, if would.
If it's hollow on the inside, it barely have any gravity.
Yeah, that's just.
But Joel, I'm wondering about the features beneath the Phobos moon. I didn't know if you had any ideas about what are these features. It almost looks like, I know they were comparing it to like the grid of a major metropolitan city. To me,
well, you know, they mentioned that it shows up a lot better with on infrared, and they said it looks like they're like the top of like a subterranean complex type deal. You know, obviously, I'd love to have a UFO. I'd love to have my own spaceship. I'd leave this rock. In fact, if any aliens are listening, I will literally pay you to abduct me. But that being over there, I'm not really sure what to look at that. I mean, you know, you could be saying that, well, it looks somewhat crystalline. I could say that it looks somewhat like the up close, like if you've ever looked at like a crystal under a microscope. Definitely has that kind of a characteristic to it. If it's showing up better on infrared, that's kind of strange. What is very telling is that you have this, you know, the Russian space professional, you know, basically saying that it's, you know, yeah, coming out and just calling it that it's an artificial object.
If the audience doesn't understand what's going on here, the objects are too small mathematically to be in the orbit they are. They just don't belong there. Moons, like for the planet Earth, they say the moon was created by a collision between the primordial Earth and a flying space object that was smaller than the Earth, but still pretty big. They had a collision. Everything turned into molten, superheated rock. It coalesced in different ways. You had the Earth, the moon. But the problem is, if Mars collided with something in a similar fashion, where is it? Well, the current theory is that they said, well, Mars must have had a collision with some space object, and maybe the object turned to dust and then dropped to the surface of Mars, and the only thing left was Deimos and Phobos. And so that's what they're going with. The problem is that Phobos, the type of rock it is, does not match the rocks of the planet Mars, the red planet. They don't go together. It doesn't belong there. Second of all, what's with the hollow thing?
Well, it's more than that, Tom, because we're seeing a pattern here for people who have been. This is a very interesting thing. When the you know, Google Moon came out, this is something that I saw years ago. People were finding structures on the moon, and they were talking about it. Again, multiple people on the internet, not just some guy in his basement, you know, with Photoshop. But Tom, you're aware of this, where a lot of people were seeing really interesting structures on the moon. And a couple weeks later, it's just a big blur. It's been edited off. It's been removed. You cannot see it. To where for a while, and I haven't checked this in a while, I'd have to go back and see, but for a while, the last time I checked, the same areas where there was buildings and structures, as we're about to see here, they went back and they edited it. They digitally retouched it, blurred the entire area where you cannot see it. So what I'm thinking.
And then they said they did that because they were like, well, we didn't want people to start getting theories about that. And to me, that is, first of all, it's almost criminal. You know what? I'm going to say it is criminal because it's a tax-funded operation. You can't do that.
Tom, let's watch this real quick. These are uncensored moon structure images. We're going to talk about what that just real quick, because like I said, this is a pattern for our audience. You know, it's strange enough finding things on Mars and on the moons of Mars, but on our own moon, it makes you wonder maybe why we haven't been back since what, 1972?
What's up, guys? Tyler.
Let's check this out. This is Secure
the
Team.
image that you're looking at right now is actually a scan taken from the Lunar Orbiter, which is a machine that NASA sent up. And the Lunar Orbiter program was a series of 5 unmanned lunar orbiter missions launched by the United States from 1966 to 1967 to map the moon and basically do reconnaissance to see what was on the moon, to see if there were any structures or military installations. So if you've ever heard of the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, that's what this image came from. So they sent this orbiter up there and they scanned all edges. They went to every edge of the moon, took images. And this scan you're seeing here is said by many to be one of the only uncensored lunar orbiter, NASA images that has ever actually been released, or not so much released, but has been put online and seen by the public. Now, there's not a whole lot of information about this image other than these are LO images from a Professor Robinson's collection. And apparently this Professor Robertson has had them online. He put them online years ago, and they are uncensored. And so this image here and a handful of others were published by Professor Robinson from his own collection on the Arizona State University's Space Exploration Resources website. And this image here in particular contains an array of anomalous structures and objects, and contains the most mysterious and amazing of which is a structure that has come to be known as the Tower or the Spire. Now, all of these images, including this one, and this is
they have side photos of this. They have photos of this from the side,
digitally scanned at 400 DPI at the Lunar and Planetary Institute in Houston.
As you'll see,
whole images were too large to be scanned at once and were broken up into 4 sections. So you will see dividing lines in this image where the entire image was pasted together. So now we'll get to these anomalies. And many people view Professor Robinson a saint within ufology research because he was able to scan these images and get them up before NASA was able to edit them out, because so far the only copies of images like this one you will even find online aren't from NASA, but they are from the Arizona State University's website where they were put up years ago. So let's get to this tower, which we will zoom in on here just so you can see where exactly in this image so you can find it yourself. By the way, we will put links in the video description to these images and to more information about these images. And as we zoom in here, you'll start to see this towering structure come to life on the screen. And here we have a close-up view.
How did that get there?
There are many interesting structures in this image, and these aren't just blurry rocks. I mean, these are straight edge, multiple straight edges, objects, mechanical shapes and structures that just simply do not belong.
Take a look at this there, Tom. Okay, so you have a vertical, this looks very similar to me. Now, this is a very large object. However, it looks to me to be almost maybe something that would be like used for communications or something, because what's this array on top of this spire looking? I don't. Yeah, I mean, that's not a rock. Obviously, it's just a weather balloon, though. So let's just continue watching and see what. But there are other photos of this that I've seen from the side.
We will outline for you, and we will also outline some of the other more prolific objects in this image. So let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit so we can see a little bit more of the surface area of this image and the objects within. So what you're seeing now is the zoomed out image. You can still see the tower, and we will go ahead and highlight a few of these main structures that really stick out to us and have stuck out to many others over the years and have become the core of the mystery surrounding this image and the structures within. So here in white lining, we have highlighted the tower and the structures at the base of it, which you're seeing here. We have also highlighted another structure that is to the lower left, down a ways from the tower, which almost looks like a capital letter H. And that's this structure you're seeing here. And then,
hey, Joel, can you send Jace a link?
Just below the tower, we have another amazing structure that's shaped almost like a fork, like the end of a fork or a letter E, a capital letter E, which we have highlighted here for you to see in white lining. and you can see it's perfectly straight edges. It has basically 3 prongs on it, like you would see on a fork. They have complete straight edges, and this structure, besides the tower, is, in my opinion, one of the second most amazing parts of this image. So here we have all 3 of the objects highlighted in white lining, just so you know what we're talking about. And we are going to go on to show you some more NASA images here in a minute, so bear with us because we have some new images that were sent to us recently of what looks like a definite pyramid on the moon, as well as some very mysterious other images that you're definitely going to want to see and that we're going to want your guys' opinions on. So first, let's deal with this image and these structures here. I will remove the white lining so we can now see the tower, we can see the fork-shaped object, and remember down to the lower left, you can see this H-like structure, where basically we have these 2 long structures that are actually sticking up into the air. You can see them sticking out over this large, dark crater that's in shadow. So you can see these 2 lines, and then we see a smaller line coming across the middle of this object that looks like a large capital H. Now we'll move back to the tower and get a much better close-up view. And again, this is one of the go-to images in moon anomaly research that you always have people going to because it is so amazing, because it is such a smoking gun in this research, because it is an untouched NASA image, and because this tower has been looked at by countless researchers that hold weight, that have looked at these structures and have point blank called them out as having to be of an alien nature or of a possible human nature. We don't know. So we have this large tower here, and at the base of it, there seem to be multiple buildings or structures, and it almost looks like the Space Needle. We have this long tower that goes up, and then we have almost what looks like a viewing area like you would see on the Space Needle in Seattle up at the top here, sticking out like a sore thumb. And if you'll notice, and you can look at this image yourself after you watch this video, there are so many anomalous objects in this entire scan. I mean, this is just a small, tiny part of that giant scan that I showed you at the beginning of the video. So you can download the high-resolution scan and look for yourself. I mean, there are objects littered in this image, things that just don't look like they belong. So below the tower, we have this large E, or fork-shaped object. This looks like some sort of installation, a platform, a launch pad, possibly a building with 3 long hallways that branch out here on the end. And you can look at it for yourself. I mean, it's there.
Maybe
this
runways.
Isn't a trick of shadows. This isn't some weird rock. This tower is there. And then once again, we will zoom into this large letter H-shaped object so you can get a better view of it.
I'm curious to know the exact measurements of those.
These very large platforms that are going up. And if you look on the left side of this H-shaped object, you can actually see a shadow going up underneath this very long platform that kind of curves up into the air. And that shadow is right here underneath the object, right on the left line of this H-shaped structure.
The H is for God saying hi.
Whatever this object is, it's hanging high above the ground. It's projecting a shadow underneath it. So it's an amazing image. And I urge all of you to download it afterwards because there have been many more discoveries in these scans. One of those discoveries are of what have been called moon spires, or these large, massive, pointy, towering structures.
These are weird.
What you're seeing here.
Check this out.
Just another part of this large scan. So this is all in the same image that you'll be able to download. And as you can see, we have what look like hundreds of these large, black, pointy spires coming up out of the moon's surface.
Well, that looks like a little town to me.
The surface. And once again, there's some other very odd-looking objects in this image. There's some objects that look like bridges. So once again, very mysterious and anomalous. I'll leave it up to you guys as to what these large, pointy objects are. Now, another very good find has actually come from another image, which you can find on the University of Arizona's website. And that is of this crater here. And basically, what's been done here is you're actually seeing an animation showing 3 different images of this same crater, wherein which this elongated object appears and then disappears. And as the animation goes through, and you can see we're pointing out where the object is that appears and then vanishes again, is inside the crater. And it's a very long object, sort of an L-shaped object. And we will go ahead and zoom in on that for you right now.
Mining equipment? A crane?
Could it be tricks of light?
Now, yet another image that we want to show you guys is of this right here, where in which we have a possible square object underneath the moon's surface, kind of being camouflaged. And you can see the image number of the LO scan up at the top here. And we'll zoom in for you just so you guys can get a better view of this weird square blending in with the moon's surface features. And I don't know, it just doesn't look like it belongs. So again, the jury's still out on this one, and we will let you guys decide. And we actually have some footage, video footage, telescopic footage for you guys to look at, showing some of these massive square buildings on the moon. But first and lastly of the images, we want to show you this here, which was actually just captured and sent to us yesterday by a viewer and friend of ours who was scanning through moon images after having watched one of our videos. He sent in this image to us, by the way, the link to which you'll find down in the video description, of what certainly appears to be a massive pyramid. So here's the zoomed out image. This is the entire image here. Once again, it's an LRO, lunar orbiter image. And if you will point your attention to this area right here, you will see what the viewer saw in the form of a massive object towering above the moon's surface, casting a very, very large shadow. That object which is just now coming into view and you are looking at now. So we have this large pyramid-shaped structure here. And again, we will outline this object, which you're seeing here with the white lines. And even without the line, you can see that it has a definite pyramid-like shape. And this thing would have to be massively tall. I mean, in length and width, this thing is huge. And you can see the giant shadow being cast down behind the object. And I gotta say, this is a damn good find. Because of the size of this thing, it sticks out like a sore thumb, even when the image is zoomed all the way out. Which is
you got to remember. I mean, you know,
see it. I mean, he saw it.
My first thought on this is that okay, well, you know, a meteorite hit a shallow area of the surface of the moon, and some, you know, something molten. You know, I mean, I'm just saying, like, it looks like there should be some sort of like a geological explanation for this. But the thing is that the moon is completely dead. You know, there's nothing happening with the moon. So if this was with as large as the structure would have to be for it to show up like this, I don't know. It's difficult to just explain that away. I think it's interesting. There's like, this looks like this is a little bit like a depressed area around here. Let's continue on.
Without zooming in and scanning over the entire image, this thing sticks out. So it could be a pyramid. It could be another object. We cannot see the other side of it because it's in shadow, but the front of it definitely is in the shape of what looks like a triangle, pyramid-like shape. So definitely something to look at and analyze yourself. And we want to thank our viewer for sending that in to us. Lastly, and certainly not the least, we have some older telescopic footage that you may or may not have seen before, but we felt that it was paramount to use it in this video because it's some amazing footage showing one of these possibly large miles-high square buildings on the moon. And this footage was actually used by the Sci-Fi channel in one of their newer documentaries called Aliens on the Moon. It's a 2-hour documentary. You can actually find it here on YouTube.
That's a big building.
There's 2 different pieces of footage showing the same object, captured by 2 different astronomers using their homemade backyard telescope setups. The first video of which you're seeing here, showing what looks to be a massive black square object sitting on the moon, complete with a large shadow reflecting behind it on the moon's surface. And if you haven't seen it yet, we'll zoom in for you here. And you can see this object. It looks, it's unmistakable, which is why I guess it's been used so many times in documentaries about the moon and alien activity happening on the moon. And it almost looks like something you would see at Stonehenge. It looks like 2 massive square stones stood up side by side, and then another massive square stone placed on top of it, like you used to do with wooden blocks when you were a kid. And this amazing footage was captured by the operator of the YouTube channel, Richard205 Maria. So I want to give a special shout out to Richard for capturing this astounding footage. So be sure to check out his channel and his other videos. And then we have this second piece of footage showing the same object from another astronomer. This footage is a little bit older, and it was originally captured by a man named Alan Roswell. Now, we tried to track Alan down, but his YouTube channel doesn't seem to carry this footage anymore. So nonetheless, big thanks to Alan Roswell if you're out there. And as you can see once again, we have this large black square object sticking out with a sore thumb, casting a large shadow behind it on the moon. I mean, what more else is there to say? It's an amazing piece of footage. All of the images and video in this post that we're showing you now is, in our opinion, very amazing and mysterious and worthy of a second, third, and fourth look and analysis. It's been used as some of the best evidence for structures on the moon. We even have NASA images showing these blur marks where these large towers once stood, where NASA has tampered with the image and smudged the objects out. So there's no doubt there's towers on the moon. And we know that there's alien activity happening on our lunar neighbor. So if you've watched our videos, you know that to be a fact. And if you haven't, be sure to subscribe and check back through all of our videos. We have some pretty amazing footage, not just from the moon, but from the Earth, from other planets, from space, and the evidence.
Yeah, so you get an idea, guys. Jace, welcome back to the podcast. You've been watching this. You've been paying attention. What's your take on this whole thing, Jace? Is this a bunch of people that are just crazy? What's happening there?
Well, hi, Joel. Hi, everybody. Looks to me like, there's shit on the moon.
That's about all we can really say is, yeah, there's some shit on the moon.
Can I sign off now? That's my expert opinion. Yeah,
that basically wraps it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's a shame because there's there's so obviously a lot of undisclosed technology out there. There's been a lot of, supposedly we've had anti-gravity technology since 1952, and yet here we are, still chained to the petrodollar, still burning oil, still dealing with, with.
Joel, are you assuming that's human technology on the moon?
What I'm saying, Tom, is that it's a shame that it's not, that the government has to sit on that kind of technology that could be used for exploration and explaining some of these anomalous things that we're looking at here. Obviously, I think if they have that technology, they've been out there, they know what's going on. It just leaves me feeling a little bit on the ripped off side to think about that.
Joel, are you certain that that is human technology?
No, I mean, I'm not saying that it's human. I'm saying that, that we have undisclosed technology that could be used to fly out there and get a better look at this type of stuff. But it's all hush hush. I'm just saying it's a shame that it has to be like that.
Some of this, I wonder, honestly, if it could be tricks of shadowing. When I, just my initial impressions, like the ones that look like peaks on the moon, it almost seems like those are strange shadows. It doesn't quite fit, but you almost want to feel like that's shadows of some kind of jagged rocks. Even though this is very tempting to see a radio tower there. Okay, that one up there looks like that one looks like a tower.
This is the best one that I've seen here so far. Let me pull this one up for you guys. All right. This is the best one I've probably seen, where there's full on side photos of what's going on here. And I think these are a little bit of a better resolution. Yeah, look at that. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit more here.
That one's not a shadow.
No.
Put down in the video description as well as the coordinates to this massive looking moon structure. And as you can see in the Google Earth imagery here, this large spire or tower looking figure, after being measured in Google Earth, is around almost 4 miles high. And
the astronauts would have seen that.
Looks to be the shadow of the object
from orbit. No problem.
Here.
Maybe it's retractable though.
Tower, which is an observation tower in Seattle, Washington. And if you look between the two images, the Space Needle and this large tower here look almost identical. And it's just a very odd thing that this tower in Seattle, which looks just like this object, just happens to be called the Space Needle. So coincidence, but nonetheless.
Have you seen this before, Jace?
No, I've not. I've seen something very similar. The almost communication twins, huh?
It's kind of what it looks like to me.
Towers.
Let's see here. They have a side photo of it. Let's see here.
The Zond 3 was a 1964 space probe mission intended to be sent toward Mars as a spacecraft test. It was a member of the Soviet Zond program, and it completed a successful lunar flyby, taking a photographs for its time. Some of these images
you guys see that on the very edge?
And the picture is just the perfect angle in which we can see this large, miles-high, towering structure on the edge of it, sticking out like a sore thumb.
What's all this?
And as you can see, these are
maybe
very
that's
detailed
artifact, but
lunar
look at that.
photographs for the time that they were taken. Much better than some of the NASA photographs that we see today. And in another Zond 3 image,
Apollo 16 apparently verified that.
Like structure, once again, sticking out from the edge of the moon at just the right angle. And so you see there are towering structures on the moon. They've been there for ages. We don't know how they got there, but we do know that there's alien activity happening on the moon. And these are just a few of the images captured. One of the most devastating pictures of one of these objects on the moon is of an object that has come to be known as the castle. And you can see here,
have you seen this, Tom?
Is a massive structure with
very
pillars on the bottom, a few more at the top, and then one long pillar at the very top. And the thing is once again miles high. And this image is from the Apollo 10 frame 4822. Now, another very mysterious image captured on the moon of these towers.
This is really good. Look at that. Casting a shadow right there.
The lunar orbiter. And this has become known as the shard. The shard is an obvious structure which rises above the moon's surface by more than a mile. Overall, with constricted nodes and swollen internodes.
My question is, how is that natural?
Wonder of the universe. No known natural process explained.
Naturally synthetic.
Enhancement with about 190 feet resolution.
This just looks like some advanced
regular outline
intelligence,
with more reflective and less reflective surfaces. The amount
built on the moon using moon material.
Parts of the shard indicate a composition inconsistent with that of most natural substances, and seems to be made of some sort of glass-like substance. And you can see the shadow of this large tower directly below it, which you can see in the image above. And if you look behind the shard to the left, we see this large, floating, domed structure, which is seen when bringing out the contrast and the brightness of the image. And once again, this dome is actually connected to the ground, because when you bring up the contrast, you can see that it is attached to some sort of tower structure that's coming down to the moon's surface. So
that's amazing.
Let's talk about the moon for a minute.
That's just nuts.
Let's talk about some of these lunar mysteries that at one point or another we've all thought about. So we're just going to kind of go down the list of the different theories about the moon, the different analysis that has been done over the years, the anomalous things that have been seen and documented happening on or around the moon, and it will give us all a bit of more perspective. Of just 1963, astronomers at the Lowell Observatory saw a reddish glow on the crests of the ridges of the Aristarchus region. This was after a similar glow and gaseous explosions were photographed by Russian astronomer Nikolai Kozyrev in 1958. Other observatories also reported a red glow. Although the moon is deemed to be volcanically dead, it seems that there is certainly something happening in its interior. Seismographic equipment left at 6 separate sites on the moon by the Apollo missions picked up a great deal of activity until it ceased operating in 1977.
Interesting.
In the early 19th century, Sir John Herschel in England saw unidentified lights on the moon during an eclipse and noted that some of the lights appeared to be moving above the moon. Other astronomers of the period also reported seeing a geometrical pattern of lights that resembled city lights. In the mid-1960s, NASA established the operation to investigate many strange flashes of light over the moon. The Space Association had received reports of many extraordinary lunar events. In 1959,
and the thing is, if it was just an asteroid impact,
observed hovering over the moon
they can
for 2
tell.
Hours. On July 29th, John
there's a
O'Neill
difference.
observed a 19-kilometer-long bridge straddling the crater Mare Crisium. 1 month later, famous British astronomer Dr. H. Wilkins verified the sighting. In the 12 months leading to September 1966, Operation Moonblink had detected 28 unusual lunar events. In 1968, an oblast
tower stack sticking up out of the ground.
This became known as
the Towers of Smoke.
Just moments earlier. The object rose nearly 2.5 kilometers above the Euclid area of the moon's surface from the Sinus Medi region. And once again, no known natural process can explain the structure. There are many indications that the moon is hollow. The moon's mean density, about 3.34 grams per cubic centimeter, is significantly less than the 5.5 gram density of the Earth's mantle. This density indicates that the moon may not have a core. The most startling evidence came on November 20th, 1969, when the Apollo 12 crew, after returning to their command ship, sent the lunar module ascent stage crashing down back onto the moon, creating an artificial earthquake. The crash site was 40 miles from where the astronauts had left their seismic devices. The ultra-sensitive equipment recorded the moon ringing like a bell for almost 40 minutes. The vibration took almost 8 minutes to reach a peak and then diminished in intensity. The ringing was repeated when the Apollo 13's third stage fell to the lunar surface, striking with the equivalent of 11 tons of TNT.
That just doesn't happen with a
According to
solid
NASA,
object.
This time, the moon reacted like a bomb. Although seismic equipment was 108 miles from the crash site.
So it really makes you wonder what in the heck is going on out there.
For 3 hours and
I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what to think. I just, there's so much about this that you know, it makes you scratch your head, because how is any of this natural phenomena for stacks to be sticking out by miles? And Magnus, you've seen this before. And have you guys heard about the hollow moon theory, about how, you know, with the seismographic instruments picking up the moon ringing for minutes at a time after impacts? That's nuts. So what is that? Some sort of an observatory? I don't even know. I mean, well, what is being withheld from us?
And these are collected from NASA, Clementine, and other famous sources. Some of these photos were taken from the Apollo missions from space, while others taken from satellites. There are said to be over 400 unexplained anomalies found on the moon, and that's enough to show me that something is or once existed there. This image here, taken on April 20th, 1972, during Apollo 16, shows an elongated, glowing white, cigar-shaped craft hovering over a crater. The photo was taken by Apollo 16 just before the April 20,
That's pretty blurry. You can't really see what's going on, though.
This image was
whatever that object is,
actually see
it's very close to the camera.
Moon below. Here we have another devastating, well-known picture taken by the Apollo astronauts on the moon, showing a large object being reflected in astronaut Alan Bean's visor. And we can see this large alien-like object hanging several meters above the moon's surface, attached to something. And at first, it looks like a possible, almost like a light fixture hanging from the ceiling, indicating that this was possibly faked on a moon set. However, once the image is analyzed further, you can see that this object is actually attached to some sort of tripod-like structure that actually extends down to the lunar surface. It looks almost like a radio tower type structure. And as you've seen, and we've documented on this channel through Apollo imagery, through Zond 3, Clementine, lunar orbiter images, there are lights on the moon. There are structures blurred out, as you're seeing in the image here. Towers.
Yeah, they blur out a lot of stuff. This is nuts.
Large, towering castle-like structures, as you saw in this image here. Domes, cities, massive objects hovering.
Yeah, if they're blurring them out,
and just
they're doing it for some sort of a reason.
Anomalous happenings that thus far NASA has not explained, nor will they explain, I assure you. So back to the original find of this large, towering structure that looks like the Space Needle in Seattle. It's an amazing find. There's definitely something to it, and I urge all of you to continue your research of the moon and continue sending us in your finds and your footage.
That's nuts.
Telescopic
all right,
video,
well, that's enough secure team
we'll
for me tonight.
So be sure to share this video.
I don't know. I don't know.
Joel, are you thinking the moon is like the Death Star? That it's like a giant.
You know, I don't know. I mean, you know, when you think about
the space station.
You guys think about how biologically diverse the Earth is, how old the Earth is. You know, who knows if this is just a big lab experiment gone wrong? You know, maybe that's just an ancient observatory for a race that was, you know, keeping tabs on their little creation. You know, maybe the Earth is just a big, you know, petri dish for the aliens to mess around with and experiment with.
And the moon was the end of the dropper.
Could be. I don't know. You know, it could very easily just have also been an observation platform as well. I mean, when you think about it, you know, put the shoe on the other foot. Say that we were as a race more advanced than we are now, or at least, you know, publicly. And we did find a planet that was teeming with life. we'd want to keep tabs on it. And if energy production wasn't a problem, if we had advanced technology, why not do something that's that big? I mean, we would probably think on a completely different scale if we had that kind of technological capability as a species, to where, the mere space station, we'd probably look at that and say, well, why would we stop there? If we can create, energy, if we can harness the atom in a way that we don't even begin to understand at this point, why not build on that kind of a scale? It would make sense.
Joel, going back to the idea that there was an ancient civilization on Earth, perhaps hundreds of thousands or even millions of years ago, that was advanced. Are you thinking that the moon and possibly Phobos, Ceres, are outposts that are still functioning without the living beings, without perhaps the Earth ancestors that built them hundreds of thousands of years ago, but now they're running on autopilot? Is that something you're thinking?
I'm thinking that you really don't even know. I mean, who's to say that you just get into weird territory.
Or do you think that it's a current monitoring station for maybe the gray aliens that don't live in the solar system but teleport here from time to time, and that is their monitoring? Yes, that's just their forward post.
Why not? I mean, it could be a staging area. It could be an observation platform.
Perhaps the moon is a natural object that has been hollowed out. If they have the technology to teleport material, could they have used that technology to create underground?
Couple things, Tom. The moon is extremely old. When you actually look into it, there's no explanation for why it's there. It's not a part of Earth. It never used to be a part of Earth. It didn't come from the asteroid belt. Nobody has any good explanation as to why we even have a moon, let alone the perfect orbit that it's in and the way that it's there to actually affect the Earth and the tidal movements and everything. So, the moon could very well, I mean, if we want to get off into this esoteric, you could think that the moon perhaps was an artificial instrument placed in orbit in order to, kind of set things in motion on Earth, because you think about all of the different effects the moon has upon the Earth, and it's not just tidal effects, but volcanic and geological as well. It makes me really wonder if it's there by design, if it's there, it doesn't seem like it's an accident. It just doesn't. Maybe it's to put this whole thing into Jace, have you ever seen any of that? Have you looked into that? Have you ever heard about how the moon is hollow? Magnus, you as well. Have you guys seen this stuff before?
Well, I've not so much with the moon, but the hollow Earth theory. But that's kind of different territory altogether. What getting back onto how old the moon is. It's interesting how biologically pretty much every single species on the planet somehow connected. I mean, the ancients that we know of on Earth based calendars off it. I mean, a menstrual cycle is based, like the list goes on and on. So it could be that it was put there for the purpose. It reminds me of a I don't know if you watch South Park, but there was an episode where the aliens were putting all these species together on Earth for a big reality show, basically. And they observed it from outer space. Now, whether the moon is that, I don't know. It's hard to say, man.
Yeah. Well,
Joel, it's also interesting that perhaps not in actual size, but in like a lunar eclipse, a solar eclipse, the sun and the moon and the Earth, it's all like the same size. Right?
Not really. What do you mean?
When the moon passes in front of the sun, they appear to be the same
Yes,
size.
talking about the perspective. Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
it's a lot smaller, but from our perspective, with its how far out its distance, it perfectly covers up the sun.
Yeah, it's a perfect.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that is a little strange. You know, whenever you, well, you know, who
What
knows?
are the odds?
If you guys want to look into this, then that's, you know, at the end of the last video, they were kind of showing how some of those structures have been blurred out. That is very strange to look at. Like I said, you can find it. I don't have the link at the top of off the top of my head, but there were really good high resolution photos of structures, like even better than what we just saw, that, you know, look to me like cities. And, you know, there are former astronauts who actually back that up as well, saying that, you know, on the backside of the moon, there's, you know, full on, you know, cities and stuff that we were warned away from. So it really definitely makes you wonder. And, you know, Patrick Owens just brought up the fact that the Earth always faces the moon from the same, or the moon always faces the Earth.
They're tidally locked.
Yeah.
Whereas other
does
moons,
coincidence play out? I don't understand that.
it is, especially since that's not what moons do.
Yeah.
It's unique.
Well, Jace, Magnus, you guys have anything to add?
There is no dark side of the moon. It's all dark.
The dark side of the moon also has strange sounds.
What's that?
It's almost like a singing sound that astronauts heard when their vehicle crossed the dark side of the moon.
Weird. Okay.
They called it space music.
I'll have to look
There's
into that.
strange sounds in their microphones.
Yeah, I've heard of that one too. Yeah.
Magnus is all about space music.
Yeah, actually, there's a I forget the link, the website link, but you can download the frequency of every single planet in the solar system, and I think the moon as well. And maybe I don't know if there's a way to analyze the frequency of the moon to figure out whether it's hollow just through the frequency alone. I kind of doubt it, but
I'm actually getting back into software controlled radio again. And when I was a kid, I used to do a lot of you know, ham radio stuff with the satellites. The ham radio satellites to go over. I had a handheld antenna that we would, you know, manually track them with the help of a computer program. And I've actually just recently found out there's a lot of backyard scientists that are doing a lot of their own research and listening to deep space anomalies just from their own computer. And so that's something that I'm kind of getting back into myself here on the side. So maybe I'll make a video of that once I get that set up. That'd be kind of interesting. But to me, I think it's so cool to see what people are doing with their telescope in their own backyard. You know, that you can actually, with off-the-shelf technology, you know, what's available to you at the store, you can use it to verify that there's miles-high buildings on the moon. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. Well, Tom, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
The NASA personnel that review photos, blurring out or falsifying images is a real thing that has happened. There are ex-employees of NASA that have been whistleblowers on this subject, and they say it is a regular practice that anything that is anomalous, they just conceal it or fix it, which if this is true, and it apparently is true, I think a lot of people would have a big problem with that.
You know, I think that they do that on purpose to keep people's thoughts focused on what's right in front of them and the grind and keeping up with the Kardashians. Because if they didn't do that, if this was part of the, you know, if this was just part of the national conversation, I think that it would cause people to think on a level outside of what they do right now. And I think that the powers that be, you know, I just think that they don't want that. It's not in their interest because of, you know,
it could also be something as mundane as NASA wanting to be taken seriously and not being a platform for kooks.
I don't know. I think they just want to keep us as happy little consumers at all cost.
Well, I think that their biggest fear is unity, and if we focus on other things and all the other nonsense that we're always fighting about, and if we focus on something like that, that would probably scare the hell out of them.
It puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
I'm not buying that everything is as it should be. Something like that three-pronged thing was where I really had to stare at that for a while. Some of the other stuff I could almost dismiss as tricks of light and shadowing or photo artifacts, but that one that was like a fork,
straight edge symmetrical objects.
I'm looking at that. Well, it does. The other thing is, it just doesn't look like anything. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a moon thing, but it doesn't look like an Earth thing either. It looks like something that would come from an alien's mind. I might have to look at that one again.
Well,
I don't know.
You guys have anything to add for this whole thing? If you guys want to call, and this is your last chance to weigh in on the show tonight, 773-669-6452. If you guys want to comment for the last couple of minutes here, we're going to wrap this up. But I think that it just goes to show that there's a lot more out there completely unexplained as far as we know it.
Joel, I don't feel like the face on Mars is debunked at all.
Oh, good. I'm not the only one.
I don't trust people that are playing fast and loose with satellite images and photos from probes. And I would like
you do run into a
mini Mars.
Yeah, well, I was just agreeing with you because you know NASA's been caught before where they're telling stories that have been debunked.
They've also censored.
Aren't.
They have censored images that are supposedly coming back from Mars, and they have gotten pretty hokey with Google Mars, where some of it disappears. Some of it, people are seeing things on Google Mars and then going back, and it's been digitally replaced with something else.
Yeah.
So I'm not in a position to trust people that are basically trying to play games with I'm very interested in the face on Mars. It's an intriguing possibility that it could be a millions-year-old structure, a giant statue, perhaps even a fallen statue. It's an intriguing possibility that I hope can be explored in the future, and I'm not about to take anyone's word for it.
Sure.
No, thank you.
Well, guys, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. Jace, Magnus, you have anything else to add?
Keep looking to the skies and don't believe no lies.
Nah, if you see a UFO, guys,
shoot anyone.
It's swamp gas from Uranus.
You guys. All right. Well, hey, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. It's fun just getting along on a Sunday and being able to kind of talk about this stuff that, I don't know, you don't really see a whole lot of people in the mainstream covering these subjects. And I think it's very difficult to just explain it away from swamp gas. But as we continue on, and if we find anything else, we'll bring it up again. And we'll
shoot first, accept the consequences later. Shoot anything that moves. Start firing your gun into the backyard if it's dark. You hear bugs in the night. Start firing randomly out the window.
Guys, share the video if you liked it. Subscribe, hit the like button or not. We don't really care. Have a good night, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Be seeing you.